Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and Symco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in. Yeah, I suppose, again, this brings up the conversation. Things like air conditioning service. Are we doing that on a vehicle health check upsell call? Or are we doing it when they book the car in for service? I just picked that as an example. It's like, when do we introduce it?
To me, that's a game changer. If you're selling it at the point that your vehicle health checks come through, it's costing you money straight away. And the reason it's costing you money straight away is there's numerous benefits of actually talking to a customer about it. Let's look at the product first of all. If it's an aircon service, it's not actually part, it doesn't have to be the technician that says when that item is due. It's a time-bound repair. So whatever yours is, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 years, the service program is scheduled for that air conditioning. It's a time-bound thing. So good quality preparation of your job cards the day before or 2 days before will identify what opportunities you've got here. This customer's been in, looks like they haven't had a service on their air conditioning. I need to speak to them. Now, if I speak to them in the morning about that operation and I sell that operation to the customer, in most instances, that's going to give at least 40 minutes extra time that car is going to be on your ramps in your workshop, okay? We all know the other part of that is that we can hook the machine up and the machine can be working away while the technician's popping to and from to make sure that he's doing the service on the car, but the air conditioning is also being serviced at the same time. So the efficiencies go up through the roof. The time it spends on the ramp is longer because we've booked it in for that extra time, which means if there's any other red work, we've got more time to communicate that and potentially get an acceptance for doing that red work as well. The other item is if they've accepted it in the morning, then it's probably a lot easier to sell the red work. We've all been in that situation where we've said, hey, listen, Mr. Bowkett, your air conditioning needs doing, but also your brakes need doing. And Mr. Bowkett says, oh, we'll leave the air conditioning, just do the brakes. Now, it didn't mean that it was any less important that the air conditioning was done. It's just Mr. Bowkett spreading the cost of the work that's there. And of course, what he probably doesn't realize by doing that is if he has a problem with his air conditioning and it's out of warranty as a result of not being serviced later on, he could be lining himself up for a huge bill, compressor or condenser or anything, any of that equipment. So of course it needs doing, of course the operation needs doing. Speak about it up front and get it. The absolute fallback position is if I'm unable to get the customer to take that operation in the morning, guess what's going to happen when Andy, my technician, has a look at that car later on in the afternoon? He's going to say exactly the same thing as I've told the customer this morning. So now I have a second bite of the cherry to say, hey, listen, Mr. Bowkett, as we expected, I know I spoke to you about it this morning and you said leave it, but it wouldn't be right for me not to mention Andy, your technician today, has identified exactly the same thing. It's that air conditioning service. Now, I know we were a little bit pushed this morning, so let me just explain to you why it's so important that it needs doing. If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but at least I can be confident that I've given you a full explanation of why we do that air conditioning service there. Is that all right with you?
See, I love the idea that we've got to allow the customers to make an educated decision as opposed to an ignorant risk. Yes. So many times, if we just let customers know what are the downsides of not doing something on the work. In fact, Duncan Ponta, again, a great after sales trainer, okay, does lots of brilliant work in the industry. He talks about with the technicians doing a video using a process called SWAP. Okay, it's just a structure. Okay, SWAP stands for what he's seen. Okay, why it's happened. Okay, what's the outcome if you don't fix that, and what he proposes. And it's just a game changer for a technician doing a successful video on the car. But again, SWAP, we said, Duncan, this is exactly what the service advisor needs to go through as well. Okay, it's just like what they've seen, what's occurred, what's the outcome if they don't get it done, So what they propose, and again, that's where you're allowing the customer to make an educated decision, as opposed to take an ignorant risk. And it always amazed me when I sit on your after sales training courses and you go through how air conditioning works with the service visor, okay? What the condenser does, the compressor does, what the gas actually does, how it makes it cool. And I remember I was listening to you speak to a lady, 20 odd years in the motor trade, and she said, no one's ever explained to me exactly how the air gets cool in an air conditioning. I now understand why it's so important to get done. And it's just that allowing the customer to make an educated decision, not that ignorant risk.
You're so right. Often with my after sales courses, the first part is to clarify with some of those people, listen, this isn't about dark arts in any shape or form. This isn't about getting people to buy. Well, the one thing I hate is people buying things that they don't need.
Yep.
What I want them to do is to be able to put through a proposal of what needs to be done for that customer, as you rightly said, to make an informed decision as to whether it's right or wrong for them. And, that's what we can do as a professional. So it's actually a lot more about how we communicate it, the words that we use, the inference that we put on it. And as you rightly said with the aircon there, if I'm not understanding what it's all about, but yeah, I'm trying to sell this product for a period, guess what? I come across as a salesperson because I'm trying to promote something that, I probably don't really understand. I'm worried that I'm going to get objections over and all the rest of it. Whereas if I actually have a general conversation with that customer about why it's so important and leave that final decision to a customer, they feel, lots of benefits from it. They feel a lot more satisfied with the purchase that they've therefore made, and they'll feel a lot more contented when they then go back and fill out your CSI. It won't be, well, I felt I was offered this, it was all pushed on me, etc. I went in there and a service bill, was told it was going to be £125 for a service, and all of a sudden come out with a bill for £700, and, all the horror stories that you hear. And to be fair, not from a franchise dealership often, but out there in the real world for other customers, where they do go in somewhere and they think that they're getting a great deal because the labour rate's £50 an hour. What they don't understand is that guy very rarely works on those cars, and it takes him 3 hours to do an operation that could get done at a main dealer. So he pays £150 from somebody around the corner that he could have got done at a franchise dealership for perhaps £110 or whatever your labour rate is. So like all of these things, it's about understanding how it works, the structure of how it works, to be able to present it to somebody that gives them that ability to take it in as you said, make an informed decision rather than an ignorant risk.
Yeah, I've got a funny story on something that you just mentioned there, and it made me laugh in servicing, but in a light aircraft. I've got a good friend of mine who has a Cessna 182. Now, this must be I don't know what it is. Is it £180,000 worth of plane or something like that? And he loves to do the work on it himself. And he has a bit of a misfire. And there's a lovely guy called Adam, who is knows his stuff. He's very, very competent. He's a good guy. And I can tell you, it's one of those weird things I'm looking at from afar. And I understand where the owner of this plane's come from, saying, what is it? And he's narrowed it down. He thinks it's the HT leads. Okay, so the spark plug leads going from the magnetos to it. And being a 6-cylinder engine, there is 12 spark plugs, 2 systems. And he's the owner of the airplane says, "Oh, I know what it is. It's HT leads. I need to get them replaced." And this was £1,000 to replace it. So of course, you know where this is going. He replaces these £1,000 leads, and it doesn't fix it. And it's so many times it just reminded me of the expert was saying, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. Now, of course, the owner's like, oh, no, let's do this, because what the expert wanted to do was going to be a more costly thing. So he said, no, let's just do this. And I often wonder, how often does the independents do the same thing? They don't really know. They haven't got the expert there. So again, and I see both sides of that. The owner is trying to save as much money as they can. Of course they are. But sometimes getting the expert and paying them right from the beginning, it's more cost effective, isn't it?
Well, the simple process of book times and things like that, as any of the franchise dealerships will know, they're not loads of spare time in any of those operations factored in for somebody. You need to have completed that operation many times to be able to do it confidently and competently and hit those book times. That's what the apprenticeship and going through those sorts of things does for new people starting out. It's that speed of operation that comes up. It's a bit like the old Ford production line. It used to be when somebody started on the production line, and it's right, your job, Bert, is to put the wheel on. Bert's then struggling in the time space that he's got with the moving track to get the wheel on. Anyway, a week goes by, all of a sudden Bert can get the wheel on, and he's got time to sort of almost take a breath before the next car comes along. And gradually what they then used to do is add in things like, okay, now you do the wheel assembly, you put the brake housings in or whatever, and then you do the wheel. And of course, if you'd given that job to him on day one, the line would have been stopping every couple of seconds because he's just not capable of doing those operations quickly enough. So, there's a speed that comes through the confidence and the knowledge that you have of the operation. And that's what we charge based on. Obviously, for somebody who's never done that repair before, it's no disrespect to anybody here, but it's like the master of of one particular thing. If you specialize in something, you're just going to be able to do that much quicker.
And by the way, and the owner, I get where he's coming from. I'm exactly the same. Okay, because you think, okay, we save some money. It sounds logical. You will save it by doing it yourself or getting an independent or labor rate. But it's I suppose what I'm driving at is our technicians. And it's something we talk about on our sales fitness training program. And I think I stole this story from you, sir, if it's right. And it's the Fedex story. And it just, I just love the Fedex story. And for the people who've heard this before, listen, my apologies, but I always wonder how true these stories are or how they've been embellished in time. But the man who started Federal Express, from what I heard, he was in the Vietnam or Korean War or something like that. And he came back and he had this idea to have a hub and spoke distribution. It was a lot more efficient than straight line distribution. I think he learned that in logistics in the war he was in. So he had this idea to start FedEx in Memphis. And the way the story is told to me is, he said, right, I got this idea, but I've got no money. So he went to all the banks saying, give me all this money to set up this Federal Express company. And no one would do it. He then said, okay. He got a customer. The bank said, you haven't got a customer. So he went to the federal government, explained the idea, and they said, you know what, if you built that, we would definitely use it because it would save us money. And where it was really smart, he said, great, would you give me a letter of intent? So now I went back to the banks and said, right, I need 80 million to start this. They said, no, it's not a good idea. So I've got one customer. Who is it? Well, it's some bloke called Uncle Sam. Oh, go on then, let's build it. So as the rumor has it, or the history, or the legend, I should say, has it, he builds this all singing, all dancing distribution center in Memphis. Okay, I mean, the packages come in one way, they're scanned, they go out the other way. It's brilliant. But 3 o'clock in the morning, the whole lot stops. Now, this is disastrous because they're building their reputation on overnight delivery. And if it wasn't overnight delivery, I think to start with, people weren't paying for the package. So it's costing them millions by the minute. The engineers on site are scratching their head. They don't know what they're doing. Okay, they can't work it out. Fed Smith, the guy who owns Federal Express, started it. Okay, is there yelling, screaming, carrying on. Okay, we need to get sorted. Legend has it they phoned the original engineer that set it up, something like 3 o'clock in the morning. He asks a few qualifying questions. He walks over to the control panel, picks out a flat-bladed screwdriver, tightens up a screw 3/4 of a turn tighter, and the whole lot starts. And Fred Smith says, brilliant, you saved our bum, that's sensational. Give me your invoice, I'll get it paid straight away for you. So he gives him an invoice for $10,000. Now, Fred Smith, he's a smart character, he doesn't kick off. He looks at this and says, 10,000. Doesn't say that's too much. Okay. He said, can you itemize that for me? I thought that was clever. But the guy says, yeah, I could do that for you. Snatches it back off him, scribbles down, okay, something on it and hands it to him. Fred Smith reads it and says, you know what? You're right. and goes and gets him a check straight away. Now, of course, the punchline is, what do he write on the invoice? For turning one screw, $1. For knowing which screw to turn, $9,999. And that's something, now I don't know if it's you told me that story or someone, but and again, I don't know how it's been embellished in time, but I think our service advisors have to remember, you're not paying for the labor rate of that technician for 1 hour.
Mm.
You're paying for that, what is it, 4 years as a minimum to be a tech, to be a master tech? What are we talking, Darren? Another, what, 3-4 years? You're talking about 8-10 years of experience there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things in the industry that we don't often do is just sit down and have a look. Maybe that's another session at another time, Simon. But when you actually look at all of the things that we provide as a main dealer when we do that servicing, and then somebody says, well, I can get it lower cost down the road. Actually, it doesn't shape up that way at all. We invest an awful large amount of money in the quality of the people, the speciality of those people, the focus, the attention that they have on that product because they know that product inside out, but also all of the peripheral stuff that goes with it. And actually, when we sit down and do that in the courses, it surprises the individuals there of, actually, I never looked at it that way. But what we actually, things like coffee lounges that we have in most of those franchise dealerships these days. If somebody's booking their car in for a service, to be able to sit down in a nice environment, a cup of coffee, toilets available, Wi-Fi, carry on with their work, it's worth money to somebody who wants to sit there and have that operation. Now, I appreciate some of those people might just come in and not use those facilities, but there'll be something else that actually we do that gives them the ability to get extra value for money out of all of the investment that we make. And we need to sing about that a little bit more, because that's where the satisfaction of the value comes from and when I spend that money. Generally things you were talking there a little bit earlier about aviation or something, there's almost a pleasure involved in spending money when it's with an expert who's told you what's wrong, who's gone through the various items. I had an old car once with an automatic gearbox issue and went to an automatic specialist, and that's all they do. Every car, but a specialist on automatics. And you'd almost pay for 10 minutes of his time just to talk to him about what he didn't know about the subject. It was that well versed in how all of those things work, the engine, the gearbox layout, how that had gone through various stages, whether it was the one to have, whether it was the one that there was some inherent little, should we call them, issues. That wealth of knowledge it can never be underestimated, and we have that sitting in the environment that we're in. Particularly with that specialization there of that one particular brand.
Listen, I've taken you off track there, and my apologies to do that. But hey, listen, again, I'm going to go back to a few bullet points. What are a few keys that if you're a service manager now, if you just turned up to a brand new dealership, you know that the vehicle health check process is not robust, okay? Be it the videos, what they do. Well, give me a few bullet points of keys that you would ask them to go and check in their business right now, that they can go and get a quick impact on.
Sure. For me, I would be breaking those processes down to, say, the front of house and the back of house, and then some of those KPIs there. So I've already touched on, KPI there of looking how long that car is on the ramps for. Okay, because this is real simple math, and it would have to be for me to be able to do it with you. But if my target, let's just make it a nice small dealership that had 40 hours available to sell today. Okay, if those cars are coming in and spending 1 hour with you on the ramps, how many cars have I got to see today?
There's 40 cars there.
There's 40 cars, isn't there, straight away?
Yep.
If that car is spending 2 hours on the ramp, how many cars do I now need to see?
That's 20 cars.
20 cars. Who's the busiest in that environment? Okay, and it will come back to your service advisor, because the technician, it will be spread over numerous technicians that you've got out the back to complete that work, but the service advisors are by definition smaller quantity. So what you have is your service advisors hung up on delivering every single day, just getting the cars in and out and booking an hour on each one of those cars. What they're not able to do is slow that process down, build up the time that's there, by focusing on what needs to be done, as I said. And often I see it where we don't factor in that red work into the day. So we're actually pre-booking that, and we're kind of going, right, fine, let's just book anything, get anything, because we're behind plan. And the reality of it is, you wouldn't be behind plan if you had the quality of work that was coming in there and you're achieving it in the right way. So, without being derisory, you become what I would call busy fools. All your management time is focused on, people perhaps complaining because they haven't had the good service that you'd expect them to have from your site. You're running around just trying to make those cars come through. If you're going to run an effective one, we should be booking to the technician's ability that we have in. There's no point booking, 20 hours today of diag if we've got one technician off who's not going to be able to do diag. So, it should be sensible booking of that. There should be space within that booking to enable red work to be sold over that period. We should have a robust process in place to be able to deal with that. So that's getting the vehicle health check done very quickly, somebody in parts getting the pricing done very quickly, and then somebody in the service advisor role getting those out to customers very quickly, followed immediately by a phone call straight into those customers. Okay, and what you then have is the foundations there of a process that starts to pay you dividends. You then start to measure things like how much you're identifying on a car, how much of that identified work you're converting. Okay, they're key measures that I'd look at there as well. It's often a phrase that's used, but live it as a customer. If you live a car, one of those cars comes through the workshop and you just follow, though lots of the information that you need will be contained in there. It got stuck here and it sat for an hour before somebody picked up and actually made a phone call to the customer. I can now see why it was boxed back up again and back out in the yard, which then meant you need to come back into the dealership. And don't get me wrong, I would always rather rebook than lose the job completely. But you've got to get into the psyche that if you rebook that job, the value in that job just disappears. The amount of efficiency goes out of that system. The efficiency comes from that vehicle being on the ramps, being done while it's in there with you today.
On the ramps, wheels are off.
Absolutely. And typically what we'll do again on the course is we'll often look at what it costs to rebook a set of brake pads. And something that may start off as an operation potentially with sort of 60, 70 pounds worth of profit while it's sitting on your ramps to be done can be as little as 20 or 30 quid if it booked in for that single operation. And that's not even taking into consideration that it would be coming in for a really short job, like a half an hour job or whatever, which again means you're going to be handling more cars. You're going to need to see 2 of those to get to that hour that we were talking about earlier. So,
I suppose if I'm listening to you correctly and got this right, instead of just looking for the magical 2 hours for every job card, okay, as opposed to the hour, in and out, I suppose some service advisors would say to me, Simon, I haven't got time to upsell. Is it fair to say they haven't got time to upsell because they're not upselling? Is that a naive thing to say?
That is absolutely what it boils back down to. And this isn't going looking for 2 hours on every single car. Let's make that clear, right? I think I've said it enough already, but just it's not looking to sell things to people that they don't want, but we need to be, and even more so with the extra operations that we have on us, the limitations that we have currently that come in and out with COVID restrictions and bits and pieces like that, we probably get to see fewer cars than we could before. And therefore, when that car comes in, we want to make sure that we're, absolutely super nuts efficient with the handling of that vehicle, the processes of that car going through the workshop, the operations that need to be done, because that's where the efficiency will come in the systems that we have. If we lose that, we go into exactly what you were saying. I haven't got time to upsell because I haven't upsold.
Yeah.
And it's that busy fool scenario.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, listen, Darren, I know a lot of this stuff is on today's Service Advisor, the program, which is the sales fitness program that you wrote and developed. How do people get hold of you? How do people find that if they want it for their service advisors, even the service managers listen to it? What's the easiest way to get hold of you?
Easiest way to get hold of me is either LinkedIn. You've definitely got a network out there, or email direct into to me at Symco. It's darren.bedford, DARREN.bedford at Symco Training. And yeah, sure, give us a contact.
Well, listen, I really appreciate your time and our rambles as we go on and we put the world to right there. Thank you very much for that. And let's do this again at some point.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Simon. Cheers.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.